everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and you've made it to week 4 of this course. So I hope you're enjoying the content. We delve into a lot of different topics in this course, so you will be exposed to a lot of terms and attributes related to geography. So this week we actually move into urban patterns, and urban patterns is the way our cities are actually formed, how they're established, and there's actually rhyme and reason to that. There are jobs, and really actually integral jobs, called urban planners, and Temple University has a fantastic program, and there are wonderful people working throughout the city of Philadelphia on urban planning. And urban planning is the way the city was set up in the beginning, and with, the central business district in one specific location, and actually out from there, how individuals lived. And this is where a huge social injustice piece comes into play, is how our cities were actually established. And when I say established, I don't mean how their government was set up or anything like that. What I actually mean is exactly how the city was actually set up to look on a map, or actually how it was supposed to look in terms of where buildings were located, where low-income residents lived, where higher-income residents lived, where factories and industries were located. So yes, all of that is planned. The problem with it is that, of course, many of these cities were set up well before everyone was actually considered equal. And so these cities mimic really old integrated patterns that hopefully new urban planners that are working in cities can sort of break, or how when new cities are formed, we start to think about where people are located and work on integrating everyone together. And you'll actually see this in terms of public transportation, right? Is that a lot of times cities that actually think about public transportation before the city actually is revamped or created have better structure than cities like Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a really old city, and because of that, public transportation came later, which means that the city was already there, and then public transportation had to be somehow woven in to the already framework of the city. Okay, so this week we're going to read about urban patterns. And of course, remember, right here in the urban patterns description, you can find all of the chapter related readings related to this session. So open that description and look at it. You have additional readings. We're going to talk about driveless cars and how maybe they can reshape a city. We're going to talk about gentrification and how it's really perceived sometimes as good, but there are a lot of downfalls to gentrification, especially in the city of Philadelphia. We are going to read more about the Jim Crow North, and this also deals with cities. We're going to talk about the problem and promises of gentrification in the city of Philadelphia, and that's another gentrification article. Reconsidering the culture of poverty, and we talk about this in terms of the city, because we're going to really discuss a topic called redlining. And redlining is a really horrible practice that was made illegal, but those social consequences and those economic consequences and injustices will be felt forever. And so redlining was when cities actually put red lines on certain neighborhoods and said, in those neighborhoods we will not give mortgages to people, or if we give mortgages we will give higher rates to those mortgages, or they loans, if you wanted a loan you couldn't really get a loan, or we wouldn't allow public housing in those areas, or we would put public housing in specific areas. Redlining is a major issue, and there's a fantastic book called The Color of Law that everyone should get their hands on in terms of what redlining is. And I'm going to go through it a little bit in the PowerPoint. Also, the Code of the Streets. Hopefully a lot of you have already read this in a sociology class, but if you haven't, get your hands on the book, The Code of the Streets. It's a fantastic book. It talks about the culture of poverty and how it's really easy for individuals who are not in poverty or have never been to say, well, just get a job, or you're lazy because you don't have a job, or just go to school, it'll solve everything. There are so many layers to the culture of poverty that exists that are really hard to scrape away, and judging people is really not the best way. way to solve that issue. So as always, you'll have an initial post due by Tuesday, a response post due by Thursday. You'll have a quiz due by Sunday, and then you have your second assignment due for me, urban patterns. And it's a two-part assignment. So you're going to actually talk about city models, and you're going to compare North American cities to South American cities. Then the second part of the assignment is you're going to pick 3 topics and you're going to write about them. And I give you a walkthrough video here. Be sure you listen to the walkthrough video, and please be sure you look over the rubric and the instructions before you complete the assignment. Many of you on your population assignments did not do this and you struggled. So please put more time and energy into the assignments. You only have 4 throughout the semester, so you can do it. So let's walk through this PowerPoint really quick. Of course, we have some more Mr. Sin videos. I love Mr. Sin. I'm sorry, but he does a really great job of breaking down concepts and being able to kind of make them all more on layman's terms, easier to understand, easier to comprehend. So urban patterns, so we're going to understanding internal city and urban development. The central business district is that center area, and that is where public, consumer, and business services cluster in that area. So our central business district is downtown Philadelphia, right? Is that central area of business. It's where a lot of financial institutions are located. It's where higher level businesses are located, etc. And urban planning is that subfield of geography where individuals are trained in multiple theories of urban development. And, you know, planners work alongside sociologists to explain how cities should grow. And I talk about Temple there. They do have a wonderful. So city models were created after World War II and based on U.S. cities. The models help us understand why people live where they live. And renters and homeowners live on the outer edges of cities usually. The wealthier do not live near the poor. No city follows one of these models exactly, but they kind of give you an idea of why people are located where they're located in cities. And so there's a couple major types. There's the concentric zone model, and as you can see, this is in a circular form with these rings, and you can read about the concentric zone model here. There's the sector model, which more looks like sectors, right? And this is Homer Hoyt's sector model. And this means that the people are located in sectors, and you can kind of see these, and they're in color formation here. And they grow in these clusters like groups. There's also the multiple nuclei model, and this is where a complex structure that includes more than one center. And Philadelphia is actually becoming a little bit more like this now that we have other cities that are forming on the outskirts of Philadelphia. You know, and this is where, you know, not all the models fit, right, anymore, because cities can change over time and they can develop over time. We have King of Prussia now, which never used to be in existence, and that is almost like a little city of its own, King of Prussia, and it draws individuals from the city out to there. So you want to think about that and look at that in terms of that. A node may exist for a downtown and other node for a university or college, and as you can see in the city of Philadelphia now, we have a lot more universities stepping up, right? Temple used to be a big university, but not as big as it is now, buying all the land around it, etc. Gentrification. University of Pennsylvania is the same way. These colleges are almost becoming like cities of their own, whereas in the past they weren't cities. Philadelphia University is another one. Well, now it's Jefferson. The College of Pharmaceutical Studies, which is not that anymore. The Sciences, Philadelphia Sciences University, that one is a little bit different now too. It's stepping up its game in terms of buying up property, and it becomes these little kind of nodes. And so we want to talk about that. There's also the peripheral model. And this sees an urban area as an inner city surrounded by suburban nodes tied together by a beltway. And that beltway brings traffic, okay? And this is what we call suburban sprawl. So you can see from the city of Philadelphia, really New Jersey was developed from the city of Philadelphia. And now you're talking about Conshohocken, off of King of Prussia, right? So Conshohocken and Collegeville, all those areas are being developed off of these outshoots or these beltways that exist, these highways that exist. So that's something you want to think about. So this chapter also talks about what suburban sprawl is and what are the issues with suburban sprawl. And suburban sprawl is that idea that you leave the city and you move to the suburbs. But with it come a lot of issues that a lot of people think don't exist. And so the white flight is actually what caused a lot of these suburbs to flourish. And that happened in the 1970s. That's really when New Jersey saw its boom of suburbs, was in the 1970s. And that was due to something called white flight, where people were told that African Americans were moving to their neighborhoods and their neighborhood values were going to go down. So they moved out. Yes. Real estate agents are put on record to say that they purposely called white individuals and said, we know for a fact that a black family moved in and you should sell your house. And there's one instance that they talk about in that book, The Color of Law, that a real estate agent actually put 40 houses on the market in one day in one neighborhood because they decided that they were going to tell all the white neighbors that an African American family moved in. And this is what you call white flight. I mean, it's disturbing at all levels. So it's something you want to reference and think about. Latin American models, you're going to need to know this because this is the comparison you're going to make from those North American models. So the concentric model, you have the sector model, you have the multinuclei model, and you have the peripheral model. You're going to compare those to the Latin American model, and you're going to take a look at where people are located there. You're gonna research and talk about megacities in this, and I give you a little kind of idea of what the challenges of megacities are. There's a lot of issues with megacities and how we're going to be able to kind of reallocate slums. And I know that term's very derogatory, but slums are a word that are used especially in third world or developing countries. And slums are actually really their own cities. They have their own government. They have a lot of own wonderful factors and culture and richness that they bring. And so we shouldn't count out those what we call slum areas. I talk about this. This is going to start dealing with, the New Deal is going to start dealing with redlining and with white flight. And there we talk about it, redlining, important concepts. So I want you to spend some time on this. And there's a wonderful link down here on mapping the legacy of structural racism in the city of Philadelphia. Huge. And I talk about inner city challenges. So what are some of the challenges to inner cities? Food deserts are definitely one of those, so you want to look at that. Drugs, municipal finances, deteriorating housing. So there's a lot of, and gentrification. I do a whole thing here on gentrification. And I bring in a lot of this because some of the topics that you can choose in the second part of your Urban Patterns paper are gentrification. You can talk about some of those additional concepts in there, and I want you to talk about those. In fact, I think I'm going to go back right now and add in redlining, and I'm going to add in maybe white flight. So let's do that. I'll add that back into the assignment, okay? So hopefully this kind of gives you a brief overview of urban patterns this week. Make sure you read the chapter. There's a lot on urban patterns in the textbook, so make sure you read that in the textbook. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll have an Ask the Teach sesh, and I will send out that information this week.